So today we are going to look at simplifying expressions. One of the important things to note is that this is expressions, which means there is no equal sign. We're not dealing with equations, we're just simplifying expressions, so no solving. So there are two things that come into play when we are simplifying expressions. One thing is that we can combine like terms. What this means is terms that have the same variable. So they have the same letter, they can be combined. Okay? And we always do this using the sign that's in front of whatever that number is, of that term. So for example, if we look at 11a minus 7a, I would say that this is not simplified because I have two things that have the same letter, and things with the same letter can be combined. I do that by just performing the operation of the numbers. So I'm going to take 11 minus 7, which will give me 4, and that a just stays with it. So 11a minus 7a gives me 4a. Now, if there's more than one letter, like when we look at this example 2, we just want to make sure that we're matching up things that are like terms. So for example, this is an n, but this is also an n. Now, notice how I'm highlighting the sign in front of it. We keep the sign in front of it. So I want to say 3n, and then I'm writing down that minus n. Now, remember, if we don't see a number in front of the variable, it's really a 1. So this would be 3n minus 1n, which would give me a 2n. Right, and then I have a couple of m's. So I have my m here, and my m here. So if I'm writing those down, right, that's going to be a negative 2m plus 11m. Now, if you say you're not good with negative numbers, right, you could pick up your calculator and you could just type in negative 2 plus 11, which would spit out 9m. Now, 9m is a positive number. So I'm going to write down positive 9m, and that's going to fill in my sign in between, which means this is now addition. So my final answer will be 2n plus 9m. I cannot simplify that any further because these do not have matching letters. So if I look at example 3, again, I'm going to try and look for things that have matching letters. So I see an x here, and I see an x here. Okay, so I can put those together. So I can say a negative 1x, right? We said no number was a 1, plus 7x, and that will give me a 6x. Now you might say, oh, well, I see a y here, but I don't see any y's to combine it with. That means there's nothing else it can simplify with, so I'm just going to write down that positive 6y as part of my answer. Then I have this negative 1 and this positive 32. So negative 1 plus 32 will give me a positive 31. None of these can be combined because they don't have the same letter, and so that's my final simplified answer. The other thing that we can do when we're simplifying expressions is we can use the distributive property. Right? Distributive property are when we have parentheses, and parentheses tell us to multiply. Okay, when we multiply, we're always going to take the number that's in front of those parentheses, and we're going to multiply it to every term inside the parentheses. Okay, so if I look at this first example, my 5 is sitting in front of the parentheses. So I'm going to take that 5, and I want to multiply it to both the 4v and the negative 13. So I'm going to say 5 times 4 is 20, and that v goes with it. Okay, then I'm going to say 5 times negative 13. So just like when we looked at that last problem, we keep the sign in front of it. So I'm going to treat that as a negative 13. Now, if you need to pull out a calculator, okay, but that's going to give me a negative 65, right? That negative is giving me my sign, so I'm not bringing anything else down, no double signs, and I just get 20v minus 65. I can also distribute a negative. So I can say negative 3 times a positive 4y. Negative 3 times 4 is a negative 12. All right, Now again, when I look at this next one, I'm saying -3 times -8, and two negatives make that a positive. So I'll get a -12y plus 24. Now the idea of combining like terms and distributing can both be joined together depending on the problem. Okay, so if we look at example 3, we actually have two sets of parentheses. I have this 3 which distributes up until I hit that last parenthesis, and then everything after that, right? So I have this set as well. So first I'm just going to focus on my green set of parentheses, and I'm going to distribute that 3. So 3 times 5z gives me a 15z, and 3 times 7 gives me a positive 21. Now I'm going to focus on my second set of parentheses. So notice how there's this negative sitting out in front, right? That's really a -1. So I'm going to take -1 times 4z, which will give me a -4z, and -1 times -11, which will give me a positive 11. But I'm not finished yet, right? I've taken care of all my distributing, but I haven't taken care of combining any of my like terms. So I want to do the same thing I did before, which is I now want to look for things that have matching letters. So for example, those are both z's. So I'm using my sign in front. I'm keeping that negative with it. So 15 minus 4 will give me 11z. Right? And things that don't have letters can go together. So this has no letter and this has no letter. So those can go together. Right? And a 21 plus an 11 will give me a positive 32. So my fully simplified answer will be 11z plus 32.